your Sensie Owl Bob, and here to tell you stories and don't believe a word I say. Now, come on, guys, get on this stick. Get those subscribes, get those likes, tell other people. So, what's happening today? Let's see. Well, on our what is the lifeblood of economies? What is the most important thing? Oil, workers, gold. No, security, stability, and good old Donnie Chump. What did he do? I mean, you could say whatever you want to say about JoJo, the used car salesman, but at least the illusion of stability was there. Now it's not. It's not even the illusion. That's why I love Donald Trump, because he is just a game show host, the apprentice, right? He is the apprentice. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, 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 ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, look at that. A little X right kind of coming over your Sensie Owl Bob. Look at all the chemtrails. Just X's all the way down. Ooh, baby, ooh, baby, ooh, baby. How about now? Did I hit the wrong button? Probably did. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I don't lip read. You should learn. Come on. Anyway, so can you hear me now? Yep. Okay, good. Yeah, I can't see. It's really bright, and I can't find my reading glasses. And thanks for putting it in capitals. Anyway, so see the economic woes that we go into these ups and downs. A little bit of recession, then a little bit of inflation, a little bit of deflation, and then economic collapse every now and then. Well, that all has been going on in America since our founding fathers. And one of the things that gave a certain level of stability to our country, even before it became a country, is that pretty much every city, town, etc., had a bank in it that had some gold and silver in it. And if people could put their gold and silver in the bank and they would insure it to a nice, like if it got stolen, those people would get something worthwhile, not just like, oh, that's too bad. And each of those banks had their own script, meaning their own cash. And that was one of the stabilities of America because it wasn't based on the king or the duke. It was on, Mr. The banker guy, right? And every town, every county, every state kind of had their big daddy, right? And that lent to sustainability because if one guy made a bad mistake, it didn't mean everyone did. Now, when we had the advent of the central bank, the Federal Reserve, which is not federal at all, meaning it is as federal as Federal Express. It's a privately owned corporation with stockholders. Did you know that? Did the people paying printing your cash, your paper? See, that's why I like Donnie Trump. Donnie Trump, by February of this year, showed us that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights weren't worth the paper they were written on because he just broke laws willy-nilly. And everyone said, you can't do that. And he said, screw you, and did it more and more and more and just flooded the field and just went at it. Then he got moron boy Neon Husk, to head douche. And no, douche doesn't even exist anymore. There is no more Department of, let's make everything work really good. That's what douche was supposed to be. But it smelled just like a douchebag because he smells just like a douchebag because he is, Neon Husk is, basically a cutout for pub boy, what's his name, Mr. Mafia PayPal. What's his name? What is that guy's name? Till, Pinocchio Till, where he wants everyone to be transhuman so he can control the software. Anyway, this is all straight up out of, good old, what's his name, who started Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry. What was Gene Roddenberry doing before he did Star Trek? Well, he was in naval intelligence, and then he left naval, and he still was in naval intelligence. I love when people wave at me. It's like, hey, Santa. Anyway, and I'm wearing this orange, I wear this out and about because, I'm behind a walker, and it's real easy for me when I cross the street to get run over because these people aren't watching for anything. So it's not like they can miss me. So, and if they're out to get me, I want to make sure they do it. Anyway, so our economics are like already in the toilet, but they were already. That's what happened in 08. That's what happened in 72. That's what happened in 86. These are all scripted. Kids, if you don't know this, and all these people like J.P. Morgan and Mr. Rothschild and Albert, what's his name, Pierce or Point or. He's the guy who basically started the Illuminati in the 1680s. Anyway, all of those guys, you have to understand, they all are demonically possessed. Now, what is demonic possession, you ask? Sensie Owl Bob, what is demonic possession? Demonic possession. See, Satan, right? Satan is, the devil, Beelzebub. But he's just a brand name. God made this guy, right? For a reason, There was everybody in the Garden of Eden and it was really great. You could do whatever the heck you wanted, Adam could, fornicate with any animal he wanted. Girlfriend. You should maybe stop that. Anyway, but he didn't know better because he was in, Garden of Eden, where everything was okay. And then Eve was made from his rib. and it really wasn't his. It was, you know, you know, some cow that he was chewing on the on some barbecue, and bang, there was Eve. And so, which that makes as much sense as anything else, right? So you have to realize that nothing that anyone says, this is the truth, this is the God's truth, this book is God's word. No, God's word is when God talks to you. When you are in covenant with God in love's co-creation, that's God. And then you are, a doula in agape love. Agape love. It's almost kind of like just like that song Muskrat Love. If you took that tune and instead of every time they said muskrat, you put in Gabi, you'd have it right. So anyway, this is all scripted. Down drop. Oh, he said no, next Messiah. He's sent by God. Well, he was to trash everything and to show without a blink of an eye or a shade or nothing. This is what happens to you if you go mercantile. You know what mercantile is? A kind of Sumerian word. You take it Sumerian into Egyptian into Greek. Basically means, mercantile means you're selling your soul, your immortal soul, for chump change. For Donald Trump change, right? You know why they put Ben Franklin on the $100 bill? Because he was the only guy who had it straight. And so to diss him, just like, good old Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone in San Francisco, they were rejiggering, politics in America. And that couldn't happen. So, and they were basing it not on bankers and power and establishment. No, they were banking it on the people. So the bankers, the people on top of the heap, the people, the powers that shouldn't be, wanted to decimate downtown San Francisco near, the hood, where everybody lived, where the Chinese lived, the Japanese lived, where the Italians lived, where the blacks lived, where the Hispanics lived, where everybody lived, right? And they got along great. They had their own little businesses, and they were relatively prosperous within a family motif, right? And then, so the rich people want to come and just take it out, just like good old Moses, Robert Moses. We had an amazing mass transit system up until World War II. Every town had trains, had trolleys. You could get anywhere, no problemo. Then we replaced it with cars. Oh, there were cars, but only rich, the infrastructure wasn't there. The oil companies after the war got a lot of oil, turned oil into asphalt, paved everything, ripped up all the train tracks. And that's where we are now. And now the cars are about to, because one little EMP over our planet, or at least over the United States, if they dropped it, let's say, and detonated it up in the troposphere, like above Philadelphia, it would toast everything in the United States, from California to Maine, it would take out chunks of Canada, and it would take out the chunks of Canada that gives us 60% of our electricity, right? 60% of our electricity comes from Canada. They could turn it off anytime they wanted. If Donnie does another stupid thing to them, they've already said that's what they're going to do. They already rejiggered their economy. They knew, again, this is all scripted, the good old NAFTA and then the America, douche that Donnie did. Those were all things that made Canada, the United States, and Mexico into one federation, like the Soviet Union, right? Like Russia is a federation, right? That's what we're heading for. So that's what Star Trek was given to us as a little heads up on what was coming in the next 100 years, right? So that went on air in 68, I think, or maybe 64, somewhere there. Let's say 64. And so 64, that means in 2064, 100 years, what we're going to have is there's a great movie written by H.G. Wells called Things to Come. And just like a year before World War II, before Poland was invaded, they made a movie of that book, right? So go online and go to, Amazon or Google or YouTube and say, H.G. Wells books, bang, they'll all show up there, right? The Invisible Man, blah, blah, blah. And there's two books you should look at. One is called A Short History of the World, big, gigantic book. One is, Things to Come. You look like one of the Blues Brothers. You're Jake. That's right. As people walk by, I blurt out comment. So anyway, if I see that they, you know, would laugh at it or find it interesting. Anyway, so those two books, right? And so the short history of the world is, like 8,000 pages long, and what's truly interesting. So he published that in the 20s somewhere, and that was the most read book in the 20th century. From 1900 to the year 2000, most read book. Do you ever hear of it? No. He made, because he published that himself. The other books, other people published. The first one, he only got £100, and that one, the guy said, "I think this is going to be good. I'll buy everything, the book, the story, the rights, £100. £100 then was like 10 grand, and he had 3 cents. So he said, sure. He did that, and the thing went viral, as they would say, and basically, whoops, we got to turn it more this way. So basically, once that thing went nuts, the guy said, hey, you got any more of this? And HG said, sure, but I'm not selling it to, what did you make on this? He said, I don't know, 600,000 pounds. So he goes, yeah, give me 100,000 pounds, I'll give you the next book. And he did, and he got more and more popular. And then he got a better prestigious job, and he was, teaching at Oxford, I think, or the other one. Anyway, and he was I don't know what to call him, but he was a good time Charlie, that's for sure. He liked the girls, he liked the rich, and so he was a scullery maid, to a guy who made curtains, right? And, he went there to be an apprentice. He didn't do anything. He just sat in the corner. Work. Guy would whip him, and he would just look at him and laugh. And so, they gave him back, and so he had to go with Mom into the big house where she was working for the rich guy. And he would just saunter around such a big house, no one noticed him. And he ended up in the library. And he ended up reading all the books in the library. So that was a few years, and no one noticed him. And he became quite, well-read, and learned other languages like Latin and Greek. And then the rich guy one day came in, because, the rich guy had a lot of other houses, and this is just one. He kind of came in every now and then. And he went into the library, and there's H.G. sitting on the floor with a bunch of books all around him, and he's reading the books. And the guy kind of comes in, doesn't scream and yell anything. He kind of sits down in a chair quietly and watches H.G. H.G. doesn't even notice the guy's there. The guy's watching him, and H.G. is just like going through the books like drinking water. And so H.G. puts it down. He gets up to go get another book off the shelf, and he sees the guy. He goes, oh, hi, I'm H.G. And the guy goes, hi, I'm the guy who owns all this. And he goes, how long you been here, and why are you here? And he goes, oh, my mom's a scullery maid, and yeah, she gave me a blowjob a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, she's nice. So what's your story? He goes, well, they tried to put me into apprenticeship, but I wouldn't do it, and so the only place you could stick me was in the library because no one comes in here. And so he goes, oh, So you've read all these books. And the guy's read a few of them. So he goes, what about this one? And H.G. kind of like, not only tells him the book, kind of page 340 says, I have no kids, and you are really smart. And I have this chair in Oxford or wherever, and I'm going to just put you in that college. And so he did. And so colleges in England were for rich people, right? And they had what are known as private schools, and that was prep schools, basically. So he put him in, and right from then, I mean, this kid, 11 years old, you're supposed to be about 14 when you start that, and he is like better. I mean, they put him like straight up into the best. He knows Latin, he knows Greek, he knows how to do trigonometry, he knows all of history, and so he's put up in the front because they realize this kid's so smart, he will motivate the other guys maybe to do better. So he stays here almost 4 or 5 years and gets into a college as not a professor, but like, let's say, an adjunct, right? Where he's not there as just one of the guys. He's actually teaching, but he's getting paid nothing. But that's okay because he's getting his chops, right? And he's getting time to write. And there are a lot of pretty girls around. So he gets a place to live, 3 squares, nice clothes, amazing library, access to really amazing people. So he's happy for, and then he starts writing, and then he gives that one book where he gets £100 and that's like 10 grand. Next one, he gets like 100 grand, and he's off to the race. He still stays at college because, why should I pay for any of this? And there are always these cute girls all over the place. So, and that's H.G. Wells. Go look him up. And go watch the movie and read the book, Things to Come. Because it's exactly what we're going through. It's quite amazing, right? And a lot of other people, Dr. Quigley of the CFR, he wrote a book called Hope and Tragedy. Again, amazing book. And he was my teacher, right? I studied under him, just like Joseph, what's his name? Joseph Campbell, right? He was teaching at a college in Washington, D.C., and I was hanging out at the Library of Congress. And none of that kind of, the kind of life I had as the itinerant scholar doesn't exist anymore. And it's sad because guys like me are the ones who were like thinking of stuff that other people said, oh, that's a good idea. Let me go research that. Oh, hey, can you work for us a few weeks maybe? Or maybe how about a year? And they pump your mind for your ideas. And then you have the internet. Then you have silicon chips. Then you have space travel. There you have, vaccines. Not that I did all that, but guys like me did that, right? And someone said, oh, my two little, when I was at universities and I was being the itinerant scholar, that's what they called me. Oh, he's an itinerant scholar. That was a title. And the other thing, if you had you kind of were, like if you were someone into science, you were a boy. And this, I'll be in these departments doing research on historical matters and looking at trends, and I would be called a, historical hobbyist. They had these terms that were kind of endearing and also patronizing, right? And the really, really, so the people who thought they were smart, who thought, oh, I'm a professor, kind of clowns, I'm an academic. Those clowns would use those phrases patronizingly. But the really, really people who were like Albert Einstein, they did it affectionately. That's, why, anyway, I won't even go there. But back to what's coming next. So, Russia is really totally trashed, but it still has nuclear weapons, can still just whack everything out. All you can do is sit in the sun, kids. Yep. All you can do is sit in the sun. It's nice in the sun, no breeze. They've been closed since last Wednesday. They'll open tomorrow. And Monday is always their closed day. And the ice cream kids, they won't be back until spring. Except maybe holidays here and there, but yep. Cheeto. Jesus calls him Cheeto. Yep, I think so. Hey guys, you got to pick up on our friend here who puts everything in caps. He's not screaming at me. He's writing so I can read it. If you put it in like the I can't even tell who you are, but it's either in Asian or whatever language that might be. I have no idea. But unless you put it in capitals, I can't read it because I didn't bring my glasses. Let's see. Here's a good book, right? Prayer of the Day. Here's another one. Is God speaking to you? Here's another one. Heaven. And these are all kind of modern writers, but this one, How to Pray, right? It's written by a guy named John Wesley. And that guy, he was a theologian in the 19th century. And he got his chops from theologians from the 17th, 16th, 15th, and 14th century. Like Pascal and who's the Jewish boy? Who was kind of in Denmark or Sweden. White people were kind of ornery towards Jews and still kind of are. It's because they've always been a group of people who couldn't even get along with themselves, let alone anybody else, especially when you're the chosen. And they would live in these pogroms, these little communities, little gated communities, kind of. That's what a rich person's gated community is. It's a pogrom, right? Which is a Polish word for ghetto, right? Anyway, even if you have a Lincoln Continental out front and you're living in a gated community, that's like living in jail. Because you can't keep anything out with a flimsy jail, even if you have security. No, because like air, really, if something really crappy's in the air, ooh baby. So they're spraying big time right above us. And that's to control your mind, and that's to control energetics per se. And that was fun. Hear that sound? That's some man with a small penis, because he's got a gigantic pickup truck, an F-150, F-250, a Ram, and it's diesel. Here it comes. He's 6 blocks away. And he's got these, he's got nothing in his bed. So if he hits ice or snow or wet, hydroplaning baby, right? And he's got these teeny tires. They're big rims, but the tread is like 1.5 inches thick, right? Whereas, on big trucks have big gnarly, but you can't go fast with that. But when you have gigantic rims and hard rubber, you can drive really fast, 120 miles. But do you really want to drive 120 miles an hour in a pickup truck that has nothing? And if you have something in your bed and you hit something solid, let's say all those 2x10s that you have stacked up in the back of your pickup truck are going to fly through that window and just decapitate you, right? And if you had it all full of cinder blocks, they would crash through the back seat and push you up into the motor. So, yeah. So not only do guys who have trucks like that have small penises, their brains are, I don't know what size they are, but they don't quite work, Anyway, okay, there you go. Got those so little nuts, even Squirrel's nose. Yeah, squirrel's nose, yes. Yeah. Got those little nuts, even squirrel's nose. Yeah, well, yeah, they're the squirrels. And again, I can barely see whatever that is. So, Ukraine, right? So Russia invades Ukraine. Ukraine's population is somewhere between 20 and 40 million people. Russia's population is somewhere around 260 million. They have, you know, uh, um, young men and women who could fight in the army, maybe 60 million of those at the beginning of the war, right? And so they come in and they should go and they had more tanks than all the rest of the world put together. Not the greatest tanks, but still a tank is a tank. And they rode in there, and because of their ineptitude, and the Ukrainians slowed them down with nothing, with some javelins, big deal. They didn't have an air force, they didn't have, they had zip. And they took them out. Big frigging time. And kept taking them out, and then innovating. And Russia didn't. It lost more than 1 million guys. Are those apples, John? Are those apples? You a big fan? Yeah, pretty much. But keep eating them. That's why you're still around. See, I keep giving content to people's lives. Anyway, as long as it's sunny, it's all good. And I got a bunch of parked cars between me and the insane people, so I'll have to get through the parked cars. By then, I can put myself in a doorway or something. Oh, there it is. My wagon's still here. Anyway, so pretty much, and now the Ukrainians, they have innovated to the point where they can hit Russia any place it wants. Now, Russia is trying to, go after the public, the people's apartment houses and all that, but pretty much from day one, the majority, so they blow out a whole block, and maybe 15 people get injured and 2 die, right? Now, if everyone was sleeping in a house, that would have been like 1,000 people, but they weren't, because Ukraine, in all their big cities, Ukraine still has their mass transit system, and a good deal of it had been put underground during World War I and the Cold War. So a good portion, especially in the cities, a good portion of their people go down and sleep in the subways, and they were designed to do that. They got beds down there, they got restaurants down there, they got bathrooms down there, right? That are set up for 250,000 people sleeping in the subway. So that's why Russia can't kill the innocents, right? And those guys are working in the factories making stuff that the people out there, right? And now pretty much right off the bat, Europeans knew and NATO knew that if Ukraine would fall, Putin would try to go back to the Soviet Union, right? So they gave them just enough weapons to keep them at a stalemate and keep knocking them down. And so now, where Russia is really, they've lost, even though Ritter and other bought folk to get a point of view per se, right? You have to look at what everyone is saying and then put it into perspective and get a insight on what's going on. So Russia's toe is really, and see, Russia used to be the Soviet Union, and that was, a union of all these, Eastern Bloc countries, right? Now it's not. All those Eastern Bloc countries are in NATO, right? Now, why did we let that happen? Because it's been scripted since Yalta, since FDR and good old Mr. Winston Churchill and Joe Stalin. Yeah, all of this has been including nuclear war, right? So that's all Russia has. That's all Putin has is nuclear weapons. And he's tried to shoot off a few of them just to show he's got them, and they both blew up like in the silo. So it's, things aren't looking good. But he still can deliver nuclear weapons where he wants to, right? Now, we have weapons up in space that can, incinerate me sitting here in this chair, or this town, or this state, or this country. I mean, nuclear weapons are nothing. Manhattan Project. You know why it was called Manhattan Project? Why? Because Nikola Tesla lived in Manhattan. And he and J.P. Morgan had turned all of eastern Long Island into a science fair, all underground. Brookhaven National Laboratory is there for not just because it's pretty there. No, it's because that was the central node of all the research. And that's why, go read Preston Nichols' books, Montauk Project. And I was in the U.S. Psychotronics with those boys, Preston and Al Bielek and a whole bunch of other people you don't know were there. And it was started by DARPA. A bunch of these whack jobs like us who really had insights that were way more like Tesla-like insights. Preston made an audio amplifier that he would take like 1920s, in good shape, 1920s 78s, right? And put them on a really good turntable and put them through his little audio amplifier and then put them out into speakers. Not only was the music amazingly sound just amazing, you could feel the spirit in the artist who was putting it down. You could feel their soul, the art of the song, right? Not just the sound of it, the spirit of it. And that was just one of his little toys, right? And we had a little lab out there in Eastern Long Island. All those boys worked for people like Grumman and Sperry and IBM out there. And I was just a itinerant scholar, I don't know where I got that